Welcome. Today, as Bill said, we're going to be talking about native trees and shrubs. Last week we did native perennials, so we're going to go into the woodies today, and the list isn't as long, and by all means this is not a complete list of natives. This is just a scratch on the tree as far as what natives are available. But just to give you an overview of what a native is, a native plant, it could be a perennial, it could be a ground cover, it could be a tree or a shrub, is a plant that co-evolves with various pollinators, bees, birds, butterflies, squirrels, chipmunks, whatever. But they sometimes are so specialized that a certain plant can just totally depend on one type of bee or one type of bird to pollinate it. Most plants are not like that, but the plants that have been around for a long, long time have evolved to have just specialized pollinators. And they've pretty much been here since the time of the Pilgrims, but as I learned in a class that we took a couple of weeks ago, they can't even count on that because the Native Americans played around with the plants that were here and burned underneath the woodlands to make it clear, so just the trees and everything else below it was bare so they could see the deer and see the bear, and so that's just kind of just a nice way to put it. And then why we use native plants. I use them, as I've said before, to bring the pollinators back into the landscape, to attract those bees, whether it's a bumblebee or a honeybee, and there's all kinds of bees, birds, butterflies, but to get them into the yard to pollinate the flowers that are in the yard, attract them with flowers and fruits and the scents of the flowers, and to keep them in your yard, whether they're going after the flowers or they're there to nest or they're there for shelter, but to just to get those native plants in the yard, so you end up having like a mini woodland or a mini meadow in your own yard because of the types of plants that you plant. So the first one on the list, we're going to start with a fruit, and it's elderberry. And elderberry is a great plant. It gets about 8 to 10 feet tall by 8 to 10 feet wide. This is the flower in the spring. It's about this big, and those are all separate flowers that produce separate fruits. And I never see the fruits on my elderberry because the birds, especially the catbird, sits there and looks at it and like, oh, it's not ready yet, and then by the time those berries are ready, they're gone. They clean off the whole shrub. But these are consumable by humans. You can pick these and make elderberry wine or jelly or whatever, but you've got to be quick. And I've had the one in my yard since the end of the 90s, and I just pruned it for the first time a couple of years ago, just to kind of thin it out a little bit, so it's a very low maintenance shrub, but produces a lot of flowers and a lot of fruit. Next one, Azalea vasei, or pink shell azalea. This is a deciduous azalea, so this loses its leaves at the end of the season. And when it loses its leaves, it has a very pretty fall color, anywhere from orange to purple to red. Very small, tiny leaves. But this one blooms, let's see, pink shell is late April. Oh, no, late May. Very fragrant deciduous azalea. The only thing is the deer like this. So you have to have a yard that you don't have deer. Because this will get munched. Some people don't have deer. And this is mainly in the pink range, pink to whitish range. Next one is Azalea periclinoides, pinkster bloom azalea. This is another very fragrant deciduous azalea. And this blooms, I believe, at late April. Yep. And again, has a very pretty fall color. anywhere from orange to purple to red. And both of these plants are anywhere, they can get anywhere from 6 to 9 feet tall to 6 to 9 feet wide. They get pretty big, but they're very leggy and very open and airy. They're not very thick and shrubby. They're open and airy shrubs. Next one, swamp azalea. Swamp azalea, this one blooms in June and July. This is another deciduous one. And this one comes in a variety of colors, from pink to white, from yellow to pink with dark pink. And this is a shrub, even though the name is swamp azalea, this is a shrub that can be planted in dry soil all the way to wet soil. It's one of those shrubs that covers the whole gamut of where it can be planted. This one has an orangish red fall color, and this one again gets tall, 6 to 9 feet tall by about 6 to 9 feet wide. High bush blueberry. Again, as I said last week, there's ones that grow 12 inches tall up to 6 to 8 feet tall. And this, you would get blueberries and share them with the birds, but some of the plants, like blue jay, produce a lot of berries. So this is a great plant to bring in the birds or to grow your fruit for your cereal in the morning. With blueberries, particularly the high bush blueberries, whenever they get planted, don't just plant all blue jays or all blue crops. Plant a blue crop and a blue jay and a Northland, different kinds of blueberries. There's better pollination, and then there's more berries. You get more berries. If you planted all one cultivar, the flowering and the berry yield would be much lower. And they've got blueberries that start producing fruit as early as June, all the way into August and September. And I've got between low bush and high bush and ground cover blueberries, I've got about 50 different blueberries on my property. And I've got one bush that is producing fruit into the 1st of September. And by the time September comes, I just can't eat any more blueberries because, and they're big ones. And that happens to be blueberry Elliott. Elliott produces a lot of nice big blueberries. And then with this one, the leaves in the fall turn bright red. So you get the flowers in the spring, the berries in the summer, and then the red fall color in the fall. Nice 3-season plant. Next one, chokeberry. There's 2 sizes of chokeberry. This is Autumn Magic. This one is black chokeberry. This one gets 3 to 5 feet tall by 3 to 4 feet wide. It's a narrow shrub. There's another one called Brilliantissima, which is a red one. And Brilliantissima gets about 5 to 10 feet tall. That's a taller, more narrow shrub. So this is the shorter version. And this is the flower in the spring. And the berries in the fall. And these tend to stay on the shrub all winter. And then the birds eat them in the springtime. Because once they come out in the fall, they're too tart, and the birds won't eat them. But by the time the spring comes by, so this will be on the plant for the whole winter season. And then the fall color is bright red, and this is the overall shape. It's more of a roundish shaped shrub. Gray twig dogwood. This is a shrub that forms a clonal community where the initial shrub was probably in here. This is all one shrub. It just spreads by underground stolons and just keeps making a larger and larger shrub. This is an excellent bird plant. The flowers in the spring, which are about that tall or about that round, and then the berries are white in the late summer into the fall, and the birds just gobble these up. And if you have the room, it tends to like a more drier soil. This will spread. It's probably about anywhere between 8 and 10 to 12 feet tall, and then it'll go on and on and on, 12, 14 feet wide. Fothergilla, very pretty plant that, this is the flower, blooms at the end of April beginning of May. It's about this tall and about this wide. It looks like a bottle brush, and it has a very pretty scent to it, very, very scentful. It's in the witch hazel family, so it has a similar leaf to a witch hazel, and the leaf is on the thick side. It's not a very thin leaf, it's on the thick side and a little bit fuzzy. And then this is the fall color, anywhere from salmon to pink to red to purple, but a very, very nice plant. This is Fothergilla major. This is the dwarf version of it that gets about 3 to 4 feet tall by 3 to 4 feet wide. Then there's Fothergilla Mount Airy, 5 to 6 feet tall by 3 to 4 feet wide. They're narrow shrubs. Next one, oak leaf hydrangea. This is not deer resistant. No. Even though it's on the books, on the list in the books, it's not deer resistant. The deer like this. But if you do not have deer, if you have a protected spot, this is a very, very nice hydrangea that blooms in July with a flower on it. It's a good sized flower, about a foot tall. Starts off as white, starts off as pink and then turns to white. The leaves look like an oak leaf, and this is the fall color. This is just starting to turn. This will get a maroonish to red, and then in the wintertime, the bark exfoliates. So this is a 4-season plant that'll give you something to look at, or something to look at for 4 seasons. And this comes. This is the straight version, and they've got ones that only grow about 3 feet tall up to 8 feet tall. Rose Bay rhododendron. This is a cool rhododendron because this one blooms in the middle of the summer, and this one needs moist to wet feet, and this one will get about 12 to 15 feet tall and 12 to 15 feet wide, and it's very scraggly looking. It's not full and rounded. It's on the thin side. But the cool thing is that it blooms in the middle of the summer. The flower heads on it, that one flower head, it's probably about this big. It's really big. But you need moist soil to wet soil in shade for this to thrive. Spice bush, or lindera. This is the first shrub that you'll see blooming pretty much the same time the skunk cabbage is blooming in the springtime in our woodlands around here. Has the yellow flowers along the stem, and then in the summer, spring and summer, it has a very small green leaf, and then in the fall it'll turn yellow. And then wherever these flowers are, there will be a red berry in the fall that the birds will eat. And this is another shrub that's usually found either in standing water or moist soil, but it can be planted in regular soil, maybe to dry soil. Mine is in about moderate to dry soil, and it does fine. And again, you really won't see the berries on this because the birds will get them before you see them. And this is also deer resistant. Okay, St. John's wort. This particular plant has a variety of different cultivars to choose from, and again, they can grow from, maybe 2.5 feet tall up to about 5 to 6 feet tall. Brings in the butterflies and the bees, and this blooms in the summer, and this is also deer resistant. The flowers are all very similar. Some of them look more like a daffodil flower, but it's a very, very nice plant. And then the flower turns into, that's a bud, but you've seen these in florists. They use them in decorating. Florists, their stems have like a red berry on it, and very pretty ornamental berry. What else? There's really no scent to the flower, but it does bring in the butterflies and the bees. Okay, summer sweet. This is another plant that blooms in the middle of the summer and grows. They have cultivars that are short, that are 2.5 feet tall, up to tree-like forms of this plant. white flowers to pink flowers, very fragrant, brings in the bees, brings in the butterflies. This plant needs to be planted not around your foundation because it spreads. It spreads by underground stolons, and right now I use the dwarf version of it, Crystallina, and I haven't seen any spreading on that yet, but I've used Ruby Spice, I've used a variety of the older cultivars, and they spread like, if they're happy, they're spreading, and they come up in everything, and it's similar to the dogwood I showed you before. It eventually forms a colony. And this is another plant that in the native world, you'll find it anywhere from wet feet, submerged in wet feet, up to dry rocky soil. It can run the gamut of the environments that it can grow in. But the scent is heavenly. It's beautiful. And then the fall color on this is bright yellow. Sweet fern. This is a plant that can be planted in rock and it would be happy. And it can be planted, you'll see this on dry slopes. Do not ever fertilize this. It doesn't like to be fertilized. It likes to live in a depleted soil with nothing in it. And the worse soil it is, the better, the happy it is. This gets about 3 to 4 feet tall. It's not a fern, but it looks like one, and it has a very nice scent to it when you run your hand along the stems of the plant. This one can go, it doesn't really do well in wet, but it can go from part shade all the way into full sun. If it's happy, it'll grow anywhere. And it's hard, once you plant this, it's hard to transplant it because, again, it grows by underground stolons. But this, if you have a place where you just can't grow anything, this is a really nice plant. Sweet shrub. This is a very nice woodland plant that needs part sun to, actually I have mine in morning sun, so part sun to part shade. This is deer resistant. It starts to bloom in May and blooms until July. It has a long bloom period. The flowers almost look like they're made out of wood. They're very stiff flowers, and they're fragrant. They smell similar to a combination of strawberry, chocolate, and banana. You can put all those fragrances together. This one will get about 8 to 9 feet tall by 5 to 6 feet wide, and the way I would recommend to buy this is to wait until you see it blooming in the nursery and then smell the flowers and make sure they have a scent to it, because a lot of them they sell in the nurseries do not have a scent. So make sure when you buy one that you've got the flowers on it and it actually smells, and then you'd be guaranteed in the future that you would have a fragrant plant. New Jersey tea. Ceonanthus. This shrub gets to be about 3 to 4 feet tall by 3 to 4 feet wide. They have a couple of cultivars. One has blue flowers, light blue, and one has pink flowers. And this brings in the butterflies and it brings in the bees. And once it starts to bloom, it blooms for a long time. And this needs to get cut back at the beginning of each season to by at least half, and then it blooms on its new wood. This is one of my favorite plants, maple leaf viburnum. This is a woodland plant on the edge of the woodland. It needs a little bit of sun in order to bloom. It produces, again, like the other viburnum, all these are separate flowers, so these will be all separate berries that would be hanging here in a clump. This is the fall color. The leaves are about this big. 6 to 7 feet tall by about 5 to 6 feet wide, and it's a thin tree, thin shrub. It's you can kind of tell here. It's not bushy. It's not thick, but it's great to put into a dry woodland. And this is also deer resistant. Winter Third Viburnum. I plant this a lot. I've got one of these in my yard. It's been in there about 8 years. I just pruned it for the first time a couple years ago. And again, it's got that viburnum flower on it. It's about this big. Not really full of scent. The cluster of berries up here that initially are pink and then eventually turn blue. And then the fall color is purple and red. And this gets anywhere between 5 and 7 feet tall and 4 to 6 feet wide. Nice shiny leaf and very, very nice plant. And you won't see the berries on this either because the birds will get them before you see them. Winterberry. This is a very, very nice plant. And this is another one of those plants that can grow in dry soil all the way to sopping wet feet. And if it's in dry soil, then it needs to have a little less sun. If it's in wet soil, it can have full sun. There's cultivars that grow 4 feet tall. There's cultivars that grow 8 to 10 feet tall. There's cultivars with orange berries, yellow berries, red berries. There's all different kinds, but this is the straight native selection, Ilex verticillata. Wherever there's a berry showing in the spring, there was a tiny whitish green flower, very tiny flower that you wouldn't even notice. And this is why this plant gets planted, because of the red berries. And so this is fall, before the leaves fall off. The leaves will turn yellow before they fall off, and then this is what's left on the shrub through the whole winter season. The birds will not eat those berries until spring because, like the chokeberries, they're too tart. They won't touch them.
Do deer eat them? Because our berries do not last through fall. I mean, you get the first cold spell and they're gone.
Really?
Every single one, and they look like that.
Huh. Yeah, most of the time they stay on the shrub.
Thought.
Yeah. It depends on, I guess, where you're at.
Yeah.
And how hungry everyone is. Now with this, you need a male winterberry to fertilize this. So, and I can't even remember which one does just the straight version, but there's the various cultivars. I can't even think of them right now. But there's Jim Dandy, Southern Gentleman. There's a variety of different male winterberries that pair up with the female ones because I have the dwarf one in my yard, and then I have the 8 to 10 footer. Somewhere in the neighborhood, and it doesn't have to be planted in your yard. It can be in your neighbor's yard. It can be down the street. Somewhere there is a male winterberry in our neighborhood that takes care of the tall shrub in mine. I've got to get a male one to take care of the shorter because I don't get any berries on my short, small dwarf ones. So, and it all depends on if the flower opens an early opener or a mid-season opener or a late season opener. That's where all the males are set up to go with the specific females. Witch hazel. Very nice. Actually, it could be a shrub that actually grows into a small tree. There's dwarf versions of this. There are copper-colored flowers. There are red flowers. There are pink flowers, and then there's yellow flowers. There are witch hazels that bloom in November and December, and then there's witch hazels that bloom in February and March. So there's all different kinds. This straight version of witch hazel turns into a small ornamental tree, 18 to 20 feet tall by 18 to 20 feet wide, and it's very, it doesn't have a shape. It's very unique in its shape. It's kind of all over the place. The fall color on this is yellow, and you can see that this one blooms in the fall, and that's one thing I don't like about the witch hazels, that when it's blooming, the leaves are still on the witch hazels most of the time, so you kind of can't see the flowers. But a very, very, very nice shrub, a thicker leaf, and this is a woodland plant, and this is deer resistant. So this one would be on the edge of the woodland, anywhere from part shade to full sun. Witch hazels are also, I've got this planted in my yard because when we had the hurricane a few years ago, the water came up over the wall and killed a lot of my plants. This is also salt tolerant. So if you live in an area that you get flooded with salt water, this can take it. The Heritage River Birch. This is deer resistant, and this one will get anywhere from 30 to 40 feet tall by 20 to 30 feet wide. It's a big tree. I plant this one exclusively because it does not get the birch borer or the birch leaf miner. All the other white barked birches are disease prone to those two. This one does not get either one. And what's nice, this is the bark. It's a very pretty peeling bark with browns, blacks, grays, salmons, pinks, and that one is actually the one in my yard from a long time ago. But that you tell it's a winter scene, and that's what I look at during the winter time. So it's a very pretty plant for winter interest. Black gum, or Nyssa. This is a very nice tree that likes moist to wet feet. Gets about 30 to 40 feet tall by about 30 feet wide. And yeah, this is what it looks like in the spring, but this is why you plant it, because it turns bright, bright red in the fall. And it grows horizontally. So the branches, it tends to be a very, you can tell, a very thick tree, but all the branches are going out this way. And it does produce a fruit from a very small flower that you will not see in the spring, and the birds eat that fruit in the fall. And then that's a picture of its corky looking bark.
How tall is that?
This one will get about anywhere between 40, 50 feet tall. It's a big tree. Pagoda dogwood. This is a woodland plant. This one will get about 12 to 15 feet tall by about 12 to 15 feet wide. And again, this one grows horizontally. And flower cluster in the spring, berry cluster in the summer that the birds will eat. And then the leaves will turn red in the fall and then drop. Franklinia. This is a small tree, anywhere from 8 to 9 feet tall by 8 to 9 feet wide. The flower in June and July, the flower is about this big, and this is the fall color, bright red. I love this tree, but I don't plant it because it's very particular. One day it could look like this, the next day it'll be dead. It's very I don't know how to describe it. It's even though there's one over on the Connecticut College campus that has been there for years, and because I guarantee my plants, I don't want to put something in that might die. But it's once it's established. It's not when it's first planted. It's once it's established. One day it'll be there, the next day it won't. So if you want to take a chance, it's a nice plant. Fringe tree. There's fringe tree. This is another nice small ornamental tree for the yard. Gets about anywhere between 15 and 20 feet tall by 15 to 16 feet wide. This is the flower in the spring, in June. Very light and feathery and airy and fragrant. This is a larger picture of it, and again it grows with horizontal branching. And then this is the fruit in the summer and in the fall. It's in the olive family, so it looks like olives. The birds will eat those, and has a very nice ornamental bark, but not too many people plant this. This is you don't find this too often. It's a very nice tree, very healthy, stays around when it's planted, and
Can it stand alone?
And it could stand alone. I've got one at our shop in the middle of the bed, and I've got two over at St. David's in front of the playground. Sweet Bay Magnolia. This is not the magnolias that you're thinking of with the big pink flowers that live around here. This is an evergreen, and this one likes moist to standing water to be planted in. This one will get anywhere from 16 to 25 feet tall and about 15 to 18 feet wide. Fragrant flowers, and it's very open and airy looking. It's not that pyramidal shape that the other types of magnolias are. That's very open and airy, very pretty plant. I've got one of these over at St. David's. If you look to the left of St. David's, there's a field, meadow. It's planted in the middle of the meadow because it's wet down in that area, so it's really happy. Sugar maple. This one gets big. This one can get anywhere from 60 to 80 feet tall by 40 to 50 feet wide, but can't beat the fall color on a sugar maple. Sugar maples need the room to grow, but if you want to plant one, make sure they're not planted along the street because they're sensitive to the salt. So plant it further in your yard, away from the street, away from your driveway, and give it lots of room to grow. Has the flower in the spring, and then has the little saguaros in the fall that the chipmunks and the birds and the deer. It feeds a lot of animals. Pawpaw. This is the only tree I haven't planted yet. It's very tropical looking. The leaves are about that long and shiny. It's a small ornamental tree, maybe anywhere from 12 to 18 feet tall by 12 to 15 feet wide. This is the flower that hangs down from the branch, and then this is the fruit. Fruit's probably about this big. I've been told that the fruit tastes like banana. Serviceberry. This is one of my favorite trees. It's actually a small shrub to a tree. It could be a single stem, it could be multi-stemmed. But this is what it looks like in bloom. You'll usually see them planted near water out in the native part of our area around here. This is one of the first trees you'll see blooming in the spring with the white flowers. Close up of the flower, and then everywhere there's a flower, there will be a blue berry in the summer that the birds will eat right up. And then the fall color is a purplish orange red. Very nice plant. And there's cultivars that grow to 8 feet tall up to 20 feet tall. Carolina silverbell. This is a very nice woodland tree that gets pretty big, anywhere from 30 to 40 feet tall to 20 to 30 feet wide. Very pretty flowers. The flowers are about this big. They're very big, that hang down like a bell. And this grows in the understory of our oaks and maples, and very happy in the woodland here. And then the fall color, I believe, is a reddish purple. Sourwood. This is another one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites. Don't see these too often because they grow really slow, but they're pretty. It's a small ornamental tree that maybe gets about 20 feet tall. Nah, there's one over here in Gales Ferry that's taller than that. So maybe 30 feet tall by about 10 to 15 feet wide. It's a narrow tree. The flowers in the summer, it's a multiple stemmed flower with the flower bells hanging down from the stem. The fall color with the flowers still on it, and sometimes the flowers fall off and it's just the bracts that are on there that show in the fall with the fall color. Another close-up picture of the fall color, and it has a very nice corky bark. These are hard to find, and whenever I find one that's affordable, because they're also expensive if you find them, I'm going to get me one. Tulip tree. This you'll see in our native areas around here. It's a lowland tree. It likes to be near riverbanks and brooks. Gets very tall. grows very straight, gets anywhere from 60 to 100 feet tall. This is the flower in the spring. It's huge. It's about that big and probably taller than that. It's a huge flower. This is one of the trees that the hummingbirds, this one and sassafras are one of the first trees that the hummingbirds hit when they come back from flying up from the south. So they'll eat this and drink from this. And then this one has an unusual leaf. You can just kind of see part of it. Pretty leaf on it. And then the fall color for this is yellow. So you need a lot of room for this one, and it needs wet feet or moist feet.